Hello men, this is Chris with the Age of Reason, and today is June 24th, 2020. Today we're just going to go over something, I'm going to title this White Man's Burden. And when I talk like this, when I say those words, I'm not just talking about the Hollywood movie called White Man's Burden, which was a pretty entertaining flick back in its day, and on occasion I still check it out because it's pretty neat. But we're going to kind of get into the concept of what is burden, and then what is the so-called white man's burden? What's your burden? What's his burden? So, burden, if you think about something being a burden, something's, you'll consider it like a heavy weight on your back, something that you've got to carry with you, something that you've got to manage, but you can never actually get rid of the burden. A burden seems to be something that continues with one along his path of life. The Christ, his burden was the cross. He carried the cross at the end of his life. But in one particular way of thinking, you could say that the burden was on him for the entirety of his life, as he carried the burden of truth on him, on his back, within his heart. And the truth was contrary to the social standard, the legal, and the political standard that was in place during the time of his existence. And as he made others aware of this burden, they would then have to reflect and carry the same burden with them. But what was the burden? The burden was what? Various truths that are hard to process, hard to manage, and hard to digest, sometimes hard to accept. One of the truths being that the poor shall always be with you. Well, that is certainly a truth. No matter what, there will constantly be some level of poor. Now, does poor have to mean poverty? I don't think that it does. Certainly a rich man could be very poor in other ways, in other traits, and other aspects of his life. And the impoverished man could be very, very profoundly rich in other areas of his life, in terms of the size of his actions, the size of his positive actions, how he takes care of the people involved in his life. His family, his brothers, and when I say brothers, I don't just mean his blood descendants. I mean his neighbors. The way that he keeps his neighbors, the way he looks out for people around him. These are things that, if exercised in a positive manner, will go ahead and put a lot of positive richness within him. And however, at the same time, the impoverished man has to continue the burden of existing within poverty, and that's on a completely independent standard. Not everybody responds to poverty the same way. It's just a fact. Many people take their poverty in stride and don't complain and try to live the best and happiest lives that they can. And the Christ, Jesus Christ, or Isa, however one may translate the name or the word used to associate him, the Christ had just as many burdens involved in his existence as the rich man and as well as the poor or impoverished man. Remember that poor does not have to mean just poverty. So as much burden as anyone else is one way we could look at it. He had just as much burden as anyone else. And so we fast forward through the annals of time and history up until where we are today, both as an individual and as a collective world, because we are all part of a macrocosm, the whole world. We are a significant part of it. No matter how insignificant we may feel, we are just as much involved in the entirety of existence as anything else, as a grain of sand on the beach, as a speck of dust on the wall, as the tiniest jumping spider that may crawl and lurk and jump around your bedroom at night. And so with this fact comes many, many questions. What is the purpose of my existence? What is my time for? Why am I here? Am I here for something greater? Am I here for this, which I am doing, because sometimes it doesn't feel like enough? These are the questions that exist throughout everybody. I don't care how enlightened one may try to push himself to look, how he might try to prop himself up. Everybody has this question within us. And how do I know that? Well, because I am a part of everybody. I am a part of the universal mind. And I'm not talking about the universe or anything pretentious and stupid like that. But I'm talking about the grander scale, that I am a part of the existence of everything around me. And so are you. And so every day, as we have grown from boyhood, from childhood, into manhood, into adulthood, we as men particularly have had our minds change. Our minds transform. Sometimes it feels as though there is an actual physical transformation in the brain as we age, as we adapt, or as we may say evolve. And when I use that word, I don't care how you feel about it, about evolution or this or that. We could say adaptation or anything else. And as we grow, as we learn more and more, as we take in more information and decide what we will process as knowledge and retain, and what we will discard and leave elsewhere, we were trying to find a way to justify and rationalize being the man in the moment. So with the word burden, again, let's just rethink the word burden. The burden is going to be something that everyone has attached to them. You have the burden of sin, just for being alive, okay? There's nonstop burdens. You have the burden that you have to pay the bills. You have the burden that you have to take out the garbage, and you might not want to on occasion. Anything, no matter how trivial or important, becomes a burden, depending on how you process it. And as we think about how the Christ processed the fact that he knew he was going to die, we have to wonder, was that a burden on him? Did he go into panic mode? How did he respond to this? Because everyone out here would. Like if you knew that you had a hit out on your head from somebody, you very may well go into panic mode. Or if you were diagnosed with so-called terminal cancer, you would probably very highly likely go into panic mode. It's all about how you process and respond to information given to you. Of course, you can survive so-called terminal cancer. So when does it make sense to panic in that case? It really doesn't. Let's say that someone was coming for your ass. Would it make sense to panic? And what would you do in panic? Would you flee? how long and how far can you run for? You would eventually have to face the issue that someone has with you and try to resolve it in the best way possible. And that might sound like a silly thing to jump off with, and it probably is. Someone coming for your ass, what are you going to do? Most people are probably going to go ahead and take the hard way with it. And we're not here to preach or advocate that or discuss that, really. How often does that actually happen in life outside of how the gangster novels and movies show it to happen? How often does that actually happen? Certainly being diagnosed with terminal cancer is entirely highly more likely than you of pissing someone off enough to the point where they actually are looking to kill you and remove you from the world. Okay, so that was kind of a cliched jump off point, and I do make an apology for that, because every one of my videos that I don't even like to say videos, everything that I produce on here, it's all coming off the cuff from the man in the moment. This is direct from my brain every time. So sometimes I don't always have the right script in my head that I go with. So here we are, being men in the moment, right here, right now, watching the world wake up from history. And what do we see and what do we feel? How do we feel? How does one feel? And of course, again, one is connected to the universal we. So your anxieties, your frustrations, your prides, your hopes, your fears, everything, they are completely connected with everyone else, no matter what. And the personalized sensation of consciousness and reality is what causes the schizophrenic feeling of isolation amongst everyone else. And as I touch on this thought today, as I touch on my thoughts that I put out every time that I put something out, this is never racially withstanding. In other words, I gladly accept information, thoughts, and ideas from anyone, regardless of the amount of melanin in their external skin, or regardless of various genes that they may have in their bloodstream. And regardless of the kinkiness of their hair, or the straightness of their hair, the length of their fingernails, the color of their eyes, it does not matter. The channel, The Age of Reason, is here. On my side, I put it here, hopefully to benefit the exchanging of thoughts and ideas, and that's the brunt of it. Of course, I tackle issues which on occasion are controversial, and they may anger some people or trigger some people, but these are things that have to be faced every day, and you've got to face them with a rationalized mind, with open eyes, both eyes and the third eye, the mind. You have to consider the information that's being given to you at all times. So, what is the white man's burden? What is it? What is the white man's burden? Is the white man's burden just how he is not good enough amongst everyone else because of an alleged history of slavery? Is the white man's burden, is it that he is an evil creation put here by a god to cause chaos, entropy, and confusion amongst the world throughout his creation of empire and the printing press? And I bring up the printing press for a reason, because after the development of the printing press, or the discovery thereof, because nothing is invented, it is discovered. In other words, these technologies are already here. The discovery, the uncovering of how to manifest and make use of them is not invention, it's discovery. So the printing press was one of the biggest things which changed the shape of the world entirely, because this allowed for the mass reproduction of word to be distributed throughout communities, nations, and the rest of the world. Is the white man's burden that he has not done enough in order to benefit those of blackness or brownness or redness or yellowness? Well, when we examine the so-called westernized nations, we do see factually that these governments, these nations, I don't know about traditionally, but at least within the last 100 years, have done many things to profoundly benefit those of color that is not of the white color. And so what I'm talking about is, of course, financial kickbacks for people to immigrate from another country, regardless of their flesh color, into a westernized country and open up a business. So the Arabic man who comes from another country, or the Indian or Pakistani, or even the African who comes from another country into a westernized nation, which was governed at large, I'm not going to say entirely, but at large, by a so-called white mind, they are able to migrate into these countries and take financial kickbacks. They're given a number of ways to benefit themselves financially and earn a living. So, or the ever controversial affirmative action campaign in the United States, which, I've never read about it. Much like other people, I take from it just over the years, even though I'm at 41, I just take with it what people have said about it. And, but I suppose the actual concept of it was to push people that are not of white skin complexion, non-white people, into work. Affirmative. You are affirmative. Come on, take action. Start working with us. That's certainly very beneficial to people. Of course, we could keep going with corporatization, with corporations, and the creation of scholarships for colleges and universities, even both here in the United States and externally abroad, and various programs which will give these men and women who are not white many benefits, so that they may learn and grow and expand their knowledge and resource and their influence over the rest of the world, which we see plenty of it. Where is the burden then of the so-called white man? Where is the burden of the white government? Where is the burden of the white corporation? What should it be? What should that burden be? And how should it continue to adapt in order to shed as much of it as possible? Now, of course, typically at the helm of all of these westernized governments and all of these corporations which lead the media and the medicine and the education industries, and even the law industries, we do not have people who are white running the show. Even the corporatized entity known as Black Lives Matter is not ran firstly, is not held professionally by a black man. the CEOs of all of the media outlets, while they have white skin, they are merely white-ish, because they will go ahead and you can read about them. They will proudly proclaim that they are of the chosen kind, which that's for you to process. If I say it here, and most of the things that I say, no matter how innocuous I try to present them, they will be received as controversial, and I have the threat of being censored constantly looming over my head. But these J-ish people, they are the ones who are running these systems. Your governments and law have been 100% completely usurped by this J-ish person. Your education system has been completely usurped by this J-ish system. Your medicine, your food, it's all been 100% completely usurped by this J-ish person. And this J-ish person, it's important to take note of them because they do not claim to be white people. So therefore, they are not claiming that they should have any of this white man's burden, because they have removed themselves from being the white man. They actively separate themselves from being the white man. And so what you then have are the lesser, lower classes of your middle class and your impoverished class stuck in the middle here, saying, well, my skin's white, so I must be white, or my skin's black, so I must be black. Never actually coming to the knowledge that white and black is actually just this divisionary terminology which has legal roots within it for the division of class. You had black slave owners. Okay, so they would have been considered of the white class, the higher class. It's just how it is. And on slavery, I'm almost at a point now to where I don't think that it happened, at least not the way that they're telling us. Slavery is a very stupid subject, and it never ever fucking goes away. Ever. In my 41 years of life on Earth, on this physical plane, manifested in this body, this subject has never ever gone away. And everyone just keeps saying, let's make it go away, let's make it go away. How do you make it go away? It hasn't gone away yet. What's the solution to it? What's the burden to put this thing to the grave, to put it down? What is the burden of the word slavery? What's the burden of slavery? What is it? Well, the burden of slavery is that the slave feels as though he is powerless and has no handle on anything, that he is only given things, and that he must beg for acceptance, and that he must beg for his freedom, of course, which he never gets because he's a slave. Because the mind of the slave class is not capable of understanding, of comprehending how the system of bondage and slavery works. The lesser class men will look at things at the superficial, externalized level and go no deeper than skin. Nothing more than skin deep. And that's where they are profoundly divided at all times. They are completely unaware, and many times, I will not say all the time, but many times people don't have the power within them to find out, like, if you tell them some information, they can't put it together that they have actually been lied to their entire lives by a system which has perpetrated slavery onto everyone, race never withstanding. That said, of course, the bondage, the servitude, and the slavery is only at the lowest levels, and those who are in power, who pull the strings of this world, who make the money, who sign the bills of law and everything else, they come in every shade of mankind. Every shade of mankind. How is that so if there's this grand division? How is it so that you have black CEOs and black politicians and black judges and black police officers and Mexicans too and Arabs? How is it so if they have came into these westernized nations and have been given such tremendous opportunity? Nearly every one of the popular sports entertainers, because sports is strictly about entertainment and it is called sports entertainment, nearly every one of the popular ones with some influence over the minds of the lesser class isn't white. And at the same time, because they're all working for the same team, even the white ones will get on board with the same narrative, the same agenda, to force the lesser classes to only think one way, to be trapped in mental slavery. Because rather than knowing themselves or rather than knowing God, they know these false idols. They follow and worship these false idols. Even if they think they don't, they do. Because they're trapped. If you are trapped, not trapped, if you have Stockholm Syndrome, you're going to start to favor those who are actually oppressing you. You're going to start believing everything that they say to you. They have you cornered, but they've been telling you some shit for so long that you're cornered for this reason, and you start to believe it. And as you start to believe it, or rather as one starts to believe it, he can also then begin to sympathize with it, empathize, and parrot the same message and say, well, I must absolutely take this burden which you have given me. I must take this burden which you have enlightened and bestowed upon me, and I must carry it. So these lesser classes continue to carry this fabricated burden with them that they are not good enough, that they have not done enough in order to show the world how they are inferior and how they have done so much damage to everyone around them. I mean, can you believe it? Can you? It sounds ridiculous when you take a step back and look at it like this. But it's happening. It's there. It's where we are, and it's where we have always been. I have seen localized people who are business owners, who are not white, continue to promote the narrative that the white man has a burden. I've seen this in town. And these people are successful businessmen. Profoundly successful, and talented and intelligent at the same time. And they promote this thought, this theory, this burden, that this grand separation exists because of the whitishness of people. Not the whitishness, the whiteness. The white-ish is when we get into that J-ish group, which subverts, controls, accuses, lambasts everyone else. I have seen these local business owners of color continue with these divisionary tactics. I've known some of them since high school. So, I mean, we're talking about people that are roughly within my age group. Okay. These owners who came from money stock. Okay. From families of lawyers, families of doctors. Came from money, finance, stock. And they're going to tell everyone that the burden is there on the lesser class whiteness. They might even go further and say it's on the higher class whiteness. But again, we've already talked about, loosely at least, how the white class at the higher echelon has opened its borders to the migration, the immigration of other people. So where is the burden then? If these countries have done so much to allow for other people to come in and find a better future for themselves, sometimes at the behest of their own localized people, no matter their color, because every part of this world has been turned into the melting pot. It doesn't matter where you go. These countries still keep their doors opened for the immigration of other people, ignoring the black, white, brown, red, yellow, etc. of their immediate citizenry. And this happens in Europe too. I'm not just talking about the United States. This happens all across the world. China, Japan, the continent of Europe, the continent of North America, everywhere. So you have these governments that have long been usurped by these Jayish folk, and these Jayish folk allow for the changing of ways to bring everybody in. All right, and that's fine. That's where we are. That's fine. In a way, there should be open border policies, but at the same time, there should be people. People should be at a certain level by now, I guess. A certain knowledge, a certain compass direction, and that's one of the biggest reasons why people don't want to have borders open, because they don't want the lesser minds, the destructive minds coming in and tearing everything down that over the generations has been worked so hard to be put together. And people become the glue of civilizations. The people are what will hold the civilization together. The people are what will hold the thoughts, the traditions together. So of course, people, it's all about how you run your house. Would you open your door to somebody else and allow them to come in without knowing anything about them? And would you watch as they punched holes in your walls and just accepted it? Would you watch as they abused narcotics in the bedroom that you rented them and just accept it? Well, of course not. Of course not. And that's how it goes throughout the overall macro aspect of the world. These are the things that people fear. People don't want to have everything just completely destroyed because of the influx of people with destructive tendencies, habits, and ideas. Because, again, people are the glue of society. The people hold it together, and their strength only comes from their mental and spiritual and sometimes physical capacities. But of course, throughout this world landscape, we have this nonstop aggression, at least in the mind, that the white man is not doing enough. The white man's burden is still there. Again, what is the burden? It's a pack that he must carry. Why must he carry this pack that he is not doing enough when the lesser class white man who is mixed up within the diaspora of his local citizenry doesn't run around preaching anything negatory against anyone else? On average, the common white and black man gets along just fine in their local communities. On average. I won't say all the time. There is no way that I could know. But on average, based on my experience in my localized portion of the world, in my localized slice of reality, on average, everybody's getting along, and they always have. And so we have this continued barrage still that just says the same thing over and over and over and over to everyone. White man's burden. The white man is to blame. For what? Let's just ask the question. For what? I'm not here to be a white nationalist or anything like that. That's not my role in life at all. Absolutely. How could I be? My son isn't white, you know. My son is whitish. How could I be a white nationalist? I've been around, much like anyone else, in more ways than one. So, what is the burden? You know? And again, I'm not this pro-white. I'm not this alt-right. I'm not of that mind. My mind is to try to figure this fucking place out before I'm dead and gone, and hopefully teach some knowledge to my children so they know how to navigate this place. And I'm here to exchange ideas, and that I as well may learn, so that I may teach not only to other people here, but my immediate children. Who owns the lands that everyone lives on? Who owns the land that everyone lives on? Does a white man own all of the land that everyone lives on? No. Who owns the media that shapes the minds of everyone on this land where everyone lives? Does a white man own that media? Who drafts the laws which govern all of the people which live on the land which is not owned by a white mind, by a white man? Who drafts those laws that have taken the fathers away, regardless of race? Who owns the laws? Who writes these laws? Because the removal of the father out of the home has been one of the most damaging aspects, probably the most damaging aspects of any race at the lower class. And I say race again just to use the words that we use to talk about these things. So we have this society that lives with each other, with itself, and we have this system of control over everyone. And it has the audacity and the nerve to continue to propagate these lies against people based first on skin color. It has the audacity to promote these lies, and at the same time, the minds of those who are within a white skin continues to give these entities money and thought and feeling and emotion. People continue to support these dangerous elements of this strange reality. And these are dangerous elements because they have an uncontrollable influence over the lesser minds, an unchecked influence. And this is possible because they have usurped speech, and they did this by creating their Federal Communication Council, their FCC, whatever it may actually stand for. But their FCC is what has usurped the freedom of expression. And then after that, they created this currency and this method of exchange throughout the world. And in doing that, they have corporatized the world. And therefore, you live and operate under these corporate guidelines. So therefore, they don't have to actively work within, say, a nation's constitution or a nation's doctrine. They have this universal code of exchange, their UCC, which allows them to have almost unlimited abilities to monitor and repress or suppress information being exchanged, and still they promulgate this idea of the burden of the so-called white man, and the white man continues to feed that system. So the lesser mind, the lesser class, is where this whiteness comes into play, and this division. But again, they have accelerated it to say that anyone, regardless of their position of authority or their position of power in a company, if they share a white skin, then now we are saying that they have got to go. Even though these companies largely do multiple things to benefit and give charity to organizations that are supposed to be in place to benefit people of color. And they use this people of color too, and they intentionally ignore the fact that white is a color. This is the color of law, the color of man that we're working with here. But if you try to challenge these things, if an individual, if I try to challenge these things, well then I become, then that person becomes, a threat, because you can't have people thinking again. They can't have people thinking again. These Jayish people, they can't have people thinking again. They need them to remain ignorant Goyim slaves. And Goyim comes to white or black or brown or red or yellow. It doesn't matter. The slave class must remain the slave. Goyim ye shall forever Goyim be, as I have said. Remember who was in the temples and using the temples as a bank. Remember who brought the currency exchange into the temple. Was that something right to do? Was that something righteous to do? Well, according to the story, the Christ didn't think so. And he went out of his way and kicked some ass to get him the hell out. And this could be a parable for, saying that, this money is not God. This money is not supposed to be what controls this world, what controls this existence. And get the fuck out of here with that thought. Get out of here with that pollutive, destructive mind. And then, of course, as the aeons continued, we have written now on our current currency, in God we trust. So they've still brought the currency to the temple. They have still been able to outright do these things which are destructive. But is it a white man, a white mind that has printed, that has created this banking system? Or is it the mind of one who proudly proclaims to not be white, to be of that Jayish stock? It's that person. It's the person who proudly proclaims to be of the Jayish stock and not a white. And this system of currency, of banking, of trade, which they have found a way to profoundly perfect, is what controls this world. And so therefore, as I have said before, from coast to coast, from sea to shining sea, money runs this bitch. Race notwithstanding, you have broke whites, you have broke blacks all over the place. No money, no power. That's how they want you to feel. They want you to feel enslaved to their money. Because if you don't have it, then you feel as though you have no power. The slave always feels powerless. The slave feels humiliated. This is a humiliation society, and its culture is consumption. But yet we still have this so-called white man's burden. Hold on, Bean. Shh. Hold on, baby. But what's the white man? What's the white man? Is the white man my DNA? Is the white man my skin color? Well, I have freckles and I have moles, so that's melanin. So am I not a melanated person? I have hazel eyes. So is that not a level of melanin within my being? How grand the deception is would spin the heads of the slave. And it does spin their heads, and they can't accept it because it makes them dizzy. And if you're dizzy, you can't walk, you can't stand, you can't talk. And people don't like that. They need to remain comfortable. The slave must be comfortable being a slave. I suggest that you all revisit the music video for Nine Inch Nails' Trent Reznor's Happiness in Slavery today. If you keep the slave happy, he will continue to work for you, for your agenda, for your progress. They have figured this out a long time ago. And so they will continue to move this narrative through their slave class. They will continue to push this agenda through their slave class. Of course, if you are of a higher stock, if you are in your mind, if you are of a higher class, you are resilient to these ideas and concepts. And you become a threat to their established system automatically. Regardless of how intelligent you are, regardless of if you're an engineer at anything, you have become a threat. Because you have recognized that they are lying to you and everyone else. You have recognized that you are not a slave. And that makes you a threat, race notwithstanding. Enough of this white man's burden already. Let's see what this white man's burden has done to people. Let's see the destructive, pitiful results it has driven into people to reduce them, to humiliate them so that they can't do anything other than beg and plead for mercy. You have people that are bowing down and saying how shameful they are for things that they've never even done. You have people who put signs on their lawns that say, "Immigrants welcome here," as if to say they're going to allow immigrants that they have never met in their entire lives to move into their homes. You have these hilarious types that I know in town, and these people make me laugh every day that I talk about them at home. I punch Nazis. Punching Nazis, even though these people have never been in a fist fight their entire lives and they wouldn't know how to recognize a fucking Nazi. If it walked right up to them and threw them the Roman salute. In other words, they would just see a guy with some right-thinking mentality and say that he's a Nazi. And if it was a black man, he'd say he's a coon. And we have to remember, too, this whole thing is not just about black and white. It's about the brown and everyone else. We have all of these different organizations that are always promoted by this Jayish tribe. We have La Micha, La Raza, everything else. There's a group for it. The ACLU is there for everything else. So if one particular race, so-called, doesn't have its own corporate organization vouching for it, well, the ACLU is there to vouch for everyone, except for that white skin. But again, I have moles and freckles in my skin, and I have hazel eyes, and I have blondish hair. So there's melanin in me somewhere. I can see it. I'm looking right at it. Am I not a melanated person? Well, then I must be impure. We have the purity spiral then. My melanation is impure. It's not enough. And this is something that gets going with these people. You always wind up getting into some form of purity spiral, regardless of what race is talking about being, the chosen kind, the chosen leader of the world, the chosen masters, the chosen one who will enslave everyone else. There's always a purity spiral. If it's a black man, then the black man may not be black enough. It's it happens. I've seen it in these groups. I am associated all across the world with various different kinds of race groups to find out how people are thinking out there. That's my way of taking the overall temperature. And I will say this, that I affirm that every one of these groups has a Jayish face behind it. I affirm that. In myself, that's just the way it is. I firmly believe that, regardless. Nothing is organic. Nothing is organic. Not when it comes to this division. So the white man's burden. The white man hasn't done enough. The white man has opened up the borders. The white man has taught people how to read. The white man has taught people how to write. The white man has given countless methods for other races, cultures, and minds to grow if it so desires, and progress if it so desires. But it hasn't done enough. Now I could have an argument with the system as well, because I am financially broke. I am at the impoverished class, but I don't carry that with me every day. That's not something that is currently, constantly rather, steering my mental direction in life. Again, as I touched on at the beginning of the show, one may be poor in one aspect, but rich in another aspect. As the Christ told us, the poor will always be with you. So I am financially poor, but I am rich in several other capacities. Several other capacities. I have beautiful children. I have clear eyes. I'm not addicted to substances and self-destruction. I'm rich in a profound array of facts, about my life. And I don't keep my head in the sand either. You don't have to be able to talk like this and be a sycophant. You don't have to, just because you're expressing that people are the same on several fundamental levels, that doesn't make you some ass-kissing sycophant. You just have to know these things. People are people. People are the same on several levels, and of course they're different on several levels. That's fine. Difference is there. Division is a part of mathematics. Take that and process that. Division is just a fact of mathematics. Okay. And so in that regard, having division exist is not a fundamentally negatory thing. But you can always put things together as a whole. That's how mathematics works. Mathematics is a push and pull. It's a logic and reasoning. It's organization. And things like that. Taxonification. These things are true in mathematics, and math rules everything around us. More than money. Math is the real ruler of everything. The way in which matter and atoms vibrate and exist, and how they interact with each other when they collide, even in the brain that you're not even aware of. Are you actually in control of your thoughts and ideas? Of course not. You are constantly influenced. You have influence. We live in an influential world which influences how we think. Okay? That's all subject matter for another show. But I have loosely touched on that before in other programs here, issues, shows, whatever you want to call it, here at the Age of Reason. So trying to steer back, though, to the white man's burden, trying to steer back to it, I think this all comes together with, the concept of burden. What is the white man's burden? What is that local white man who lives up the street from you? What's his burden? Okay, what's his burden? His burden is a lot of things. He's got to make sure he can keep his bills paid just the same as anyone else. He's got to make sure that he can keep his job just the same as anyone else. He's got to make sure that he's not dying of cancer just the same as anyone else. He's got all these truths in life that are his burden, just like everyone else. They want you to focus that the burden is on something completely superficial, though. That whiteness of mankind itself is a burden. That's what they want you to think. They want you to think that whiteness itself of mankind is a burden and should be thinned out and reduced and removed. And I don't just say this. I mean, these people of the Jayish stock have said it for themselves. And these people who appear as though they are of a different race, who say these things as well, I am certain in my thoughts that they are always Jayish themselves. Okay? All right, I am certain of that. I don't care if they're brown or black or red or yellow. I am certain that anytime you see them on the media, that they are of a Jayish stock. Okay? That they are brownish, that they are blackish, that they are whitish. Okay? Because these ish people are what run the mind through their media, through their money. But as soon as you start to talk about that, as soon as you start to express that, then they swiftly have a way to label you and a way to try to silence you. They have a nonstop supply at their disposal. They all they have to do is create a story and send it to the media companies, and everyone's going to run with it and jump. It doesn't matter if it's a Trayvon Martin, there's your Mar code. If it's a George Floyd, there's your O code. If it's a Rosa Parks, there's your O code. These people are always connected. There's codes that will help you identify these things because they're lying to everybody, but they can't lie at the same time. And that if you need help putting that together, just remember the line that everyone loves to quote from Scarface, I always tell the truth, even when I lie. That's how they operate. They are constantly lying to you, but they have to tell you that they are running the show, that they are the ones pulling the strings. And they do this with code words and code symbols and all these things. They will show you that, yeah, they're bullshitting you. But they're the ones running it. So they're telling you that they're lying, but they're telling you the truth at the same time. One of the worst parts about the whole thing is that while we are intrinsically connected in that we all feel emotions and respond to stimuli by the same mechanics, it's really hard to be certain that your words are properly heard and properly processed. In other words, there is no way that you can affirm that you will be taken for the right way, that your word will be taken for the right way, because there is so much diffusion, disillusion, and displacement of honor and thought in the schizophrenic mind of society. And so all it takes is for you to, all it takes is for one to say something and maybe not have the right way of saying it, and people will think that one person is their opposition. And that's one of the worst parts about it, like the signaling against people and the cancel culture against people, the ignoring of context when hearing content. And that's where the madness of the burden really shines. The madness of the white man's burden begins to shine there explicitly. You might as well just see these white people tying nooses around their necks and trying to hang themselves for a certain amount of time, so that they are expressing that they have felt the pain and fear of being hung. And how often did that actually even happen? Again, if it came from a history book, I am almost at the level where I'm not going to believe it by default anymore. And that doesn't mean that I don't believe that mankind has done terrible things to itself. But how can you just blindly believe everything? The white man's burden. It's a very strange notion. No other man has a burden. Where's the red man's burden? What's the yellow man's burden? What's the Chinese man's burden? Okay, we talk about black, black and white, polar opposites of each other in terms of the scale of color. In other words, you take a black picture, you push negative on a button, and it goes, black to white to black. So, well, what about everything else that comes in between? What's their burden? What is the uniform burden of being alive for everyone? What is it? I don't know. How far does one have to go to attempt to convince other people that he is not a racist? How far does one have to go? Why should one have to even put that out there? Why should one feel so compelled, so terrified that his mind and his words are going to be taken the wrong way? Why should he feel that strongly? He must say, I am not a racist. I am not a racist. Please forgive me. I'm with you. I don't like this stuff. I'm not a racist. That's a schizophrenic mind. It's a delusional mind. It doesn't make any sense. It's a dysfunctional mind. If not schizophrenic, it's certainly dysfunctional. But it seems as though the burden has been created by these Jayish entities that run the show, that the white man has to prove how much of a threat he is to the rest of the world because of his whiteness. And that's just absolutely sickening. And on that note, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this one up for the day. This was another long Age of Reason production. Hopefully it'll make you all think, and hopefully you share it with somebody who doesn't think. That's the main purpose of why I do anything over here, so that you'll try to express this stuff with somebody else who doesn't think. Because otherwise we're just speaking into an echo chamber. We're just telling each other the same things over and over and over again, and giving ourselves hugs over it. Nothing really comes from that. So, if you ever find anything influential, beneficial, thought provocative from what comes out of my mind, I do always ask that you share it with other people. Absolutely. If I were just talking to myself, then there would be no reason for me to ever record anything. So that said, I hope you guys were able to sit through this one. It was a long one. Trigger within reason out there. Trigger, don't trigger out there. They're going to keep this white man's burden thing going more and more every day. Just watch it. Watch it. Everyone. Black man, yellow man, red man, brown man, white man. You watch it, okay? Watch how they do this. Remove yourself from what you used to think and just watch it, okay? Just watch the narrative and talk to yourself about it. If you support it, talk to yourself about it and ask yourself, why do I think this is a good idea? Where have I been touched by these myths that they have created? Okay? Ask yourself. All right? That's all. I'm just here to exchange ideas, because the more I exchange ideas with other people, the more I learn. The more I learn, the less I know. I shed things that I thought that I used to know. Okay? That's a part of the adaptation of life. It's a part of the adaptation of thought. A part of the adaptation of the evolution of wandering the path, meandering the stream of life and reality. Alright guys, this is Chris with the Age of Reason. Keep both eyes, all three eyes open at all times. Pay attention. What is the white man's burden? What is burden? Who has the burden of proof? The accuser has the burden of proof. Okay? So if they're accusing you of anything, they better be ready to prove it. Catch you guys next time.